Hey folks, we're talking about the Book of Boba Fett, Episode 5 or Chapter 5, The Return of the Mandalorian. We're going to give our spoiler-free reviews of the episode, and then we're going to jump into full spoiler recap or re-breakdown of the episode starting now. Welcome to Nerd Social. I'm Nathan.
And I'm Colin.
So, the spoiler-free logline or summary of this episode is an unexpected ally emerges, but the title of the episode kind of gives away what's going to happen. Colin, what did you think of this episode?
This was actually by far the best episode of the Book of Boba Fett, which is weird because you have a main character from another show come back, and then basically it becomes the best episode. And it's very interesting in that you almost get reintroduced into the character again from that previous show, but at the same time he is the predominant character of this episode, which sometimes people do. Some showrunners have done this in the past, but it was just very jarring in many ways that he was going to be that predominantly the character. So so it was definitely something that was very jarring to me, but I definitely loved the episode. It's probably the best episode. I highly recommend it. So the rewatchability of this one is very high. So I haven't actually watched it for the second time yet because this week was busy for me, but I intend to watch it again probably sometime this weekend. And yeah, it's very glorious and very fascinating overall what they did for this particular episode.
Yeah, I like the episode as well. It was very fast paced and in places, slower in other places. But so for some background or some behind the scenes things, we're recording this a second time. But what I said the last time is still holds. I'm a little concerned that we're not going to get to the end of the Book of Boba Fett without a solid solution or a resolution, because it was a kind of a detour this week. It was a detour. It was a very enjoyable detour, and as you said, it's very rewatchable, this episode, and I had to prepare clips for the review. But even if I didn't have to prepare clips for the review, rewatching some of the scenes without spoiling the scenes, some of the scenes were very enjoyable, even on the third or fourth viewing. But a character comes into the show and takes over the show, and we only have 3 episodes left until the end of the show. And there's lots of loose ends that need to be tied up. It's also not great that someone else came into the show and they not only stole the thunder from the main character. It's also, like you said, the best episode of the season. So a little worried that we're not going to get a Book of Boba Fett season 2 because of that, because people just want to see more of this character. So I don't know, but it's a great episode. Definitely want to see of this character maybe in his own show. Want to get back to the story that we've been we invested 4 hours in, so that when we ultimately invest 7 hours, that it's satisfying though. So that's the only downside to this excellent episode for me.
The one more thing before we get into spoiler talk is that I just think that having watched this major character from the previous seasons and things like that, in the previous seasons we see the Mandalorian. And also, they were at the end of that type of chapter 5 or chapter 6, there were still parts of it that you did not see they accelerated the pace towards the end. And then at the end of those episodes, you were thinking, oh my gosh, what's going to happen next? What's going to happen next? And then you see that the buildup is toward the final episode. So they've done this before in the past, and I'm hopeful that Filoni and Favreau have a plan, and that they've done this before, and basically they're going to just follow this plan where there's going to be some sort of resolution which is going to lead to the third season of The Mandalorian. Again, I have confidence that they're going to pull it off, but yeah, I do share somewhat of your concern, Nathan, is that it seems as though they finish it in 2 episodes, but in the past, we've seen before that they've done that. So yeah, it'll be very interesting to see what happens.
Yeah. So I guess we can start to get into the spoilers, but if you haven't seen the episode, go see the episode. It's a great episode. Great rewatchability. And with that, spoilers ahead. Before I move on, if you're enjoying the conversation, please subscribe. It helps the channel and helps us grow. really appreciate it.
Mm-hmm.
All right, where do you want to start with the episode?
Yeah, it's very interesting. I think that the start of it was at this kind of meat packing factory type of thing,
Mm-hmm.
and it felt a little gangstery in some ways, like
Yeah.
you're a scene from Goodfellas or like some, The Sopranos, but in a Star Wars universe, it threw me off. It's like they have that big slabs of meat in space. That's weird, and so they were setting up this type of, again, gangster movie type of vibe, and so we see Mando immediately on screen, and we're like, wow, okay, we kind of knew that he was going to be appearing in the from last week's episode. We knew that Mando was going to show up,
Yeah,
but we didn't. But I think, to me, I didn't think that it would be that quick. It would be like more, oh, we're still going to explore Boba Fett and Fennec Shand and slowly build our way to having an appearance by the legendary Mando. So no, they just went right to it, and then they just started with that story. And then for me, it was, okay, so when is Boba going to show up? This is his show. Come on now. What happened here? Now, like I said in the non-spoiler part, that we do have episodes where the attention is diverted to a character. But this character is reaching iconic status, and you're trying to get him into this thing, whereas you did not really, you built up Boba Fett already. You would think that they would make the creative choice to keep building him instead of trying to bring back Mando for this episode and having him predominate the whole episode without even one appearance from Boba Fett. That's strange to me. So I'm still confident. I still feel as though I feel confident of what they're doing, but the creative choice kind of was questionable, because I was like, where is Boba Fett? Like, what happened to him? Like, why is Mando playing such a big role in this episode? So that's kind of like where I was at when I started the scene, and then as I went through the whole entire episode of chapter 5.
Yeah. So as you said, it was a little weird to go through the entire show without Boba showing up at all. Like we get Fennec Shand for a little bit, and there's this conversation between Fennec Shand and Boba at some point at the very end of the episode. But besides when Shan shows up, there isn't Boba, there isn't Shan, and then the episode ends. So there's the short exchange, and then nothing about the Pike Syndicate, nothing about Boba's desire to take over for what's his name, Jabba the Hutt. Yeah. So yeah, it was a weird way to have this one-off episode, but I enjoyed it. But again, it doesn't bode well for the season of the show, because we didn't just invest this 1 hour that was good. We're going to be investing 7 hours. So if they're not going somewhere, it's gonna be annoying at the end. But
I think there was some talk last year when the Mandalorian season 2 had completed that they were going to take this detour, that the Book of Boba Fett was the detour, and that it was going to be like 3 to 4 episodes, and then we're going to jump into Mandalorian season 3. Now, that was just like on the rumor stage back when season 2 had completed. So whether or not, when those rumors came out online, was that the truth? It seems as though it might be the truth, where you only going to get 3 to 4 episodes, and you're jumped of the Book of Boba Fett. And you don't be surprised if next week you're going to say The Mandalorian, and it's like chapter 1, and it's what happened with the Book of Boba Fett, and Boba Fett becomes a secondary character. So it could be that way, that is just a shock to people. What the heck happened with Boba Fett? And that was it? That was all you're going to talk about? Like, is there supposed to be more of him? Because you promised us 7 episodes, and then you're going to just cut in the middle and say The Mandalorian,
I feel like that would annoy a lot of people. Even the people who would rather see The Mandalorian would be annoyed if that happened. It's possible, but I think that would annoy a lot of people. But I don't know. So yeah. I guess we should actually get into the specifics of the episode besides Fennec Shand showing it up. Like you said, that we had the beginning of the episode where Boba shows up in this meat locker, basically out of people have been making references to like Rocky, what it looks like, and then he's trying to run down this bounty, and he starts to fight, and we immediately see the Darksaber get taken out in this fight. Not only do we see the Darksaber, we also see that this is the first time he's used the Darksaber, and he's definitely not a Jedi. He's more of a brawler here, and we also see in this scene that the Darksaber gets heavier and heavier, which is why he burns himself in this scene also. So it's a cool scene. It's definitely probably better action than lots of the stuff that we've seen in the Book of Boba Fett. So it's interesting that we got that early on, and it's more of these kinds of scenes, set piece kind of scenes throughout the entire episode, which was again thrilling to see, but off topic for the Book of Boba Fett.
Yeah, you didn't like Black Krrsantan beating up on Boba there.
That was a very slow fight. It was a very slow fight. Like, it was not staged anywhere near as well as this fight. Like, this fight had a lot of energy. Yeah. It was very kinetic, and we can thank Bryce Dallas Howard for that, because she was the director of this episode, and she definitely brought a lot to the script. We talked about this when we recorded this the first time. It's hard to tell whether or not it was like Rodriguez got bad scripts or like very slow scripts, or that's the way that he decided to stage the action in a very slow, prodding sort of way. Because I think in the episode that he directed, we got the mod crew, but we also got the very, very slow chase through Mos Espa, and then we also got, like I said, the Black Krrsantan fight. But yeah, this action scene was better than anything else in that episode, and there are more action scenes in this episode. This is only the first action scene in this episode. There are other action scenes in this episode that are also very good. So yeah, she did an excellent job.
Yeah, one thing about her is that she's been getting a lot of love online, and it's funny because her father actually directed Solo, a Star Wars story. So he was the one that was behind it after the two directors left. He was there to revive it and make it into a movie. So it's very fascinating in that aspect, but also, yeah, I think looking at, and I said this before in our review the other day, was that Robert Rodriguez, there's some things about him where it's very good to have bits and pieces. He does, like in the season 2 Mandalorian episode where Boba Fett was beating up on those stormtroopers, those were really intense scenes, and that was really good. And so you see, but then if you have more and more of Robert Rodriguez, you're like, what's going on here? It's not really vibing with you. And I think that if you have a small bits and pieces of him, I think that he works well. But then if you get more and more of him, you're like, no, I think that doesn't work for me, or yeah, it's just too much. It's just too overexposed. I think that's like how his career has been as well, because he starts off really well and people are really impressed, and then it like just declines from there in some aspects of it. So yeah, I think that's kind of like how I view it. And also because it's a Mandalorian episode, I think that they wanted Bryce Dallas Howard to do it, because I remember that she had that really good action scene from Mandalorian season 2 when Mando and Grogu were on the boat. And so the monster was grabbing Grogu away, and then I think it was that one. And then they were on the air, and it was just like it was a Bo-Katan. And the other Mandalorians were raiding that airship to steal the weapons, and they were all directed by Bryce Dallas Howard. So I think that she knows how to do action scenes, and it's particularly with Mando. So I think that's credit to her, but hopefully she gets definitely more work.
I'm sure she'll help get her father's Ron Howard. I'm sure she's not going to be starving for work, but I hope she gets more action stuff like this, because she does this stuff very well. Yeah, later on after the scene, he cuts the guy in half, and he takes his head to the person who has the bounty on him, and specifically to get some information. And the information that we find that he's trying to get was where the rest of his sect, the Death Watch sect, is. And they're somewhere on this station, because we the location of this is a space station. It looks pretty cool. It looks like some people are saying it's a Dyson sphere, which is basically a station built around a sun. I need to go back and look to see if there's a sun I know there's a sun there, but it doesn't look like it was built around the sun, but it's possible. And something like that is shown up in like Star Trek, and it's a theoretical thing named after a astrophysicist named Dyson. But anyway, he meets up with Emily Swallow's character, the Armorer. I don't think she's gotten a name She's just known as
the armorer.
And he also meets up with the other trooper. I forget what his name is. The one that
He's some last name's Vizsla though.
He's from the clan Vizsla, which is going to cause a problem later on because Vizsla is his ancestor, and he was the original holder of the sword, the dark saber that he's wielding now. So he'll try to challenge him for the sword later on. But before that, he actually asks her to create something for Grogu by melting down the sphere, and it looks like it's going to be like chainmail or something like that, because we have this image of these little things falling down to the ground, and it seems to package up into something very small there. So it looks like it's going to be chainmail. So I don't know. People are speculating that this is how he survives Kylo Ren trying to kill all of Luke's foundlings, because he has...
True, you never know. But in this part of the timeline, I know he ages slow, but maybe 20 years before those events happened, 25 years before?
20 to 15. It depends on when Kylo was born, and I think he's probably born around this time, if not a couple years after this time. And then when he was with Luke, like when he broke away, because it's possible he broke away when he was a teenager.
He was a teenager, but at the same time, I think that there's some stories, some Star Wars books that are canon. But the Star Wars books that were canon that tied to Jakku.
Were they canon before?
They are canon. They're still canon. Sorry, they're still canon. This is the Aftermath series for Star Wars. I think that I don't know when that was. How many years that during that time was before The Force Awakens, but. Yeah, it may have been 5 to 10 years down the line where the Empire was they're still operational. There's still remnants of it. And that's when they went into Exegol. If you're into the sequels, that's when they were defeated, and the last big battle was in Jakku, and then they were defeated and went to like where Exegol was and things like that, exiled to Exegol basically.
Okay, so this is separate stuff from the other books where like Luke had a wife and stuff like that. This is
those are the Legends series with Mara Jade and stuff like that. That was Legends and stuff. So yeah, they had a set of the Solos had a set of twins at that in alternate universe or whatever. Now the Legends series. This is before the established ones that that Disney made with the sequels.
Yeah, when he meets Din Djarin, he's like 50, so it's possible that he could still be around. I mean, they're like you said,
he's definitely around. He's definitely around during that Force Awakens time. But yeah, that's where people are speculating. Did he die or did he move off somewhere else?
But that's probably a good point though. If he's been training with Luke for 20 years, he doesn't need to be with the other like young kids. So it's possible that he wouldn't have necessarily even been there when it happened. Yeah. But anyway, speaking of the lightsaber earlier, we were talking about the duel. So we get this duel between Din Djarin and the guy, the Vizsla of the Vizsla line, and that's also another really exciting and captivating scene. It comes up to a slow duel here, but also it's cool because they're on this gangplank, and if they make any moves that are like too wild, they're gonna fall off into space, because before this fight started, they took off their rocket things. They took off their rocket. So if they fall off this gangplank, they're gonna die, and they're gonna fall into space. I guess someone can go and get them, but I guess this is also I guess someone can go and put on one of the things. We can also see here how heavy it is for him to lift. He took the sword from him, but it's not helping him here, which is the same issues that Din Djarin was having. So he's as bad as Din Djarin is with the sword. This guy is immediately like terrible with the sword. It's a giant axe for him or something like that. So yeah, I guess we'll see some montage scenes. Maybe when he goes and he meets up with Luke to see Grogu, we'll see some scenes with him, maybe with Luke practicing with the sword, because he did some practice with the armorer. And that didn't seem to help him much. So maybe he needs to have some practice with the Jedi to help him. Yeah.
It is a dark saber. So it was created by the member of the Vizsla family who was a Mandalorian and Jedi. Basically, the only individual who was a Mandalorian and Jedi.
Yeah, because they there were enemies. As we got some lore last season that the Mandalorians and Jedi were enemies. That's why the Beskar armor is the only thing that can repel lightsabers. So I don't know. Maybe we'll see Luke and Din Djarin training together, because the other thing that we get at the end of the scene is that she asked him whether or not you've ever removed your helmet, and he had to tell the truth that he has removed his helmet. And she said that you're a Mandalorian no more. Now he's not even the Mandalorian anymore. So
sometimes this is the way. It's not a very good thing. Like he just it's definitely very iconic. It's become a very iconic quote, but definitely it backfired. Of course, it's like one of those things where, but I can explain why I removed the helmet, but it's I don't really care why. But as we saw from the Mandalorian, we know why he had to remove the helmet, and he made that conscious choice to remove the helmet to save Grogu. It was already a given that was going to be the case, and also the fact that Bo-Katan really told him that those guys are really crazy, and we do remove our helmets, and that's not a big thing with us. But yeah, you're just with those Death Watch group, that Death Watch sect of Mandalorians who are like hardcore. So that's why they never want to remove their helmets, and they spout all this language about this is the way and stuff like that, and you're brainwashed, through all that type of stuff. And Bo-Katan's kind of, no, we don't do that. But then it's very interesting also that he did mention about Bo-Katan, and then the arm got into that whole story about the flashback of the Great Purge, how the Empire came to destroy Mandalore. And so that was really fascinating to see the destruction of Mandalore in that way, kind of like we talked about this you brought this up in our previous review about how there's some really interesting backstory that's there that was brought up there. So I just think her view of Bo-Katan was not very appealing. It was not very complimentary. It was like almost saying that she bungled the leadership and she really didn't deserve that. And we saw that from, I think it was from Rebels. I think it was from Rebels, where basically Sabine Wren won it in battle, and basically she gave it to Bo-Katan. Yeah. Basically. So it was like given to her, not through combat.
Yeah.
And because they're so hardcore about it, they're like, oh no, she's not legitimate and stuff like that. So it's rather interesting to kind of get into that Mandalorian lore of the
cultural specificity of, I guess now she feels that she's shamed and as backwards as she says that the Death Watch is, I feel like now a lot of whoever survived on Mandalore are thinking more like about the old ways, like the Death Watch clan did. So I think that she definitely needs to win it in battle to regain power of Mandalore. I guess we'll definitely. I want to definitely see Katie Sackhoff show up again and Bo-Katan show up again. So we shall see how that shapes up. This is definitely a great first episode of The Mandalorian season 3. Oh, and the guy that he fought was Paz Vizsla. He had his ancestor was Pre Vizsla. All right. The after I guess he's shamed and he's told that he has to go back to the waters of the mines of Mandalore to reclaim his honor. Which I'm not sure how he's like. How am I going to do that? Because we saw in the backstory that it was bombed. And anyways, he's told to leave and he goes to Tatooine because apparently Amy Sedaris' character, Peli tells him that she has a ship for him, but it's not the ship that he expects it to be. It's actually happens to be a Nabooan ship, a ship that we saw in the first episode of the Star Wars. First episode, meaning the movie The Phantom Menace. We saw those fighters in The Phantom Menace. So that was a pretty cool callback to that movie. There was a bunch of callbacks to that movie, but before there was before the callback later on, we get a giant montage scene. I actually got a clip of the montage scene, but the montage scene actually goes on for a very long time. It's 4 minutes long, so I actually had to speed this up to double time to go through all this. This scene actually reminded me of something, and then I heard someone say what it reminds them of. It reminded me of the Iron Man scene when he's putting his armor together, and guess who wrote both of those scenes? Jon Favreau wrote both of those scenes, so that's probably why it seems very much like the Star Wars. The scene seems very much like the Iron Man scene. But yeah, this goes on for like 2 minutes, and they have banter in between, and he seems to actually like this droid a little bit and everything, which is an evolution for him because he tends to hate droids because they killed his family. So this is a cool scene. It does go on for a long time though. So this is what I'm talking about, where there are definitely some fast parts of this episode, but there's also some slower parts as well. And there's also this piece that they get, which definitely looks like the piece that they use in the first, so not the fourth episode, the New Hope, and the trash compactor, to keep the trash compactor from compacting them, basically. So they came up with some name for it now, which is
really?
Huh? Yeah, they pulled it from, the Jawa said they pulled it from the bottom of a Pike cruiser. Cruiser? Yeah. It was like a regulator or something like that. They made some technobabble thing. So that I thought that was pretty cool. That was pretty funny, and definitely a deep cut nerd thing that they added. So,
definitely. Yeah, it's very interesting in that his interactions with the droid, especially with the droid there, with the light and things like that, moving the light. He's come back this way. Oh, no, this is not good. Thank you. You can see that he has some humanity to him. Djarin has some humanity. And it again, I don't know it's whether or not because he had this attachment to Grogu that really made him to become such an iconic character now. But you contrast that with Boba Fett, and it's like Boba very stoic, but definitely a scoundrel in some ways. But then Din Djarin in some ways is a scoundrel, but then he has a heart. He has a heart of gold type of scoundrel type of thing, like a Han Solo type.
Right.
But it's just very interesting to see the contrast, and it's almost as though like people online ding Boba Fett for being the personality that he is, but then with Din Djarin it's like different because of his attachment to Grogu, and also because you can see that there's some kindness to him, there's some heart to him that I think Boba Fett is really missing. They try to give him some heart with his story of the Sand People, and I mentioned about this in our review. The Sand People in the past have been viewed as the enemy. They were the savages, and yes, you're trying to humanize them in many ways, yes, and that was great. But at the same time, having him be shown humility and teamwork and all that stuff, with the Sand People, it's kind of but like it's very similar to the Mandalorian scene when they were helping when Cara Dune and Mando was helping those villagers fight off against the Acid, the Imperial War. That had more heart. That had more, you feel for them, and it's very interesting to see that dynamic play out between these two characters, and whether or not people appreciate that nuance or that difference, I'm not sure as Star Wars fans, but I can definitely see the differences between the two and why Mando is definitely more in terms of his character than Boba Fett.
I get what you're saying, but I don't know that I agree with the sentiment that Boba is less caring. They just have different personalities. I feel like he's less caring, or he has less of a patience for like human beings. He's shorter with other human beings, but they spent time actually showing the bond that he had with the boy, and even though the boy is a sand person, I don't think that makes him less of a being, and less of a person than the kids from that village. They also spent time showing that he was kind to the Rancor, and also that he was kind to I forget the name of the giant that he was riding, the giant beast that he was riding. What do you remember? The Sand People? Bantha. Yeah. So that he was also with the Bantha as well. So you've seen like the softer side of him. So if someone was trying to look for softer side of him, you can definitely see that his kindness and his humanity is there. So I think they're both scoundrels, but I think that maybe the interactions that Boba gives to other human beings are very stoic, and maybe that's what's off-putting to people. Some people don't like people, like, but that doesn't mean they're unkind or like terrible people, because they also they're other creatures besides people.
That is true. I blame this on Grogu's too cute. That's why, and it basically, because of Grogu's magnetic personality, it warped our view about Din Djarin probably. It warped a lot of people's view. Grogu. Honestly, what
Yeah, he's
you
very.
can't. How can you say no to that? Seriously.
He's very.
And also, it's funny because one other thing was which IG-11. IG-11 was a great character. Like you definitely see the humanity in that.
I think IG-11 is probably where Mando's definitely started to have less of a prejudice towards droids, because IG-11 gave up his life to save them at the end of the first season. So he's definitely, so like when Mando asks what happened to the droid pod, and she says that I hollowed it out because you have this prejudice, but the last time she saw him, he did have this prejudice, and then he went through all these experiences where she's not privy to, where he feels a completely different way about droids than he did before. But even since she hollowed the astromech pod out, that's probably where Grogu is going to sit now when he gets Grogu back. So
again, he comes back into our lives. We cannot avoid Grogu.
And as I was saying earlier, we get another nod to the episode 1, The Phantom Menace, with the test flight. So he does this test flight through, I forget I think it's Beggar's Canyon.
Beggar's Canyon.
Yeah.
Beggar's Canyon. Yep.
He does this test flight through Beggar's Canyon, which is basically exactly the same track as the speed race, which was pretty cool to see. Again, it was another very well directed, action packed scene. And you get these low shots from inside the cockpit, like if it was a real cockpit, because that was the only place you could actually put a camera if it was a real cockpit, which was pretty cool. They have a couple scenes. They have a couple shots of him as if the camera was like on the wing or something like that as well, which is also cool. So yeah, this is an awesome little scene, and then it ends with him being pulled over by space cops because he flies too close to the transport that we didn't even talk about the transport, so the way that he gets to Tatooine in the first place is because he has to take public transportation. They make him take out all his weapons off, which is hilarious. Which is a hilarious scene before he even gets to Tatooine. So he sees this little kid on the ship, and when he's doing the test, he flies too close to the transport and actually sees the little kid sees him again out of the window. Which is another nice little nod there. But they also had when they were putting the ship together, they talked about the fact that if you wanted to take off, you could. So he uses that to take off from the cops, basically using nitrous. They put nitrous in a Star Wars ship, so that was pretty cool.
I didn't know who the actor was on the other X-wing. We know the other one. We know that he's the father from Kim's Convenience.
Oh, the actor on the other X-wing is actually the guy who studied for Luke. So he was the body double for Luke, the young Luke. So at the end of The Mandalorian season 2, they had to have a stand-in who was the same shape of Mark Hamill was in the 70s, 80s. So they brought an actor in to rotoscope Mark Hamill's face over, and it was the same.
Right.
It was same exact. So now you actually get to see his face, because you didn't get to see his face before. They put Mark Hamill's face on his face, which is probably
we can be an X-wing pilot. That'll be oh yeah, X-wing pilot. Hey, I want to be X-wing pilot. After, but it's very fascinating in that if they ever going to launch that rumored Rogue Squadron movie, if they could borrow some scenes from that, would be pretty cool if they ever did that. Well, if Patty Jenkins is still attached to that.
I don't know that she is.
Do that would be pretty cool.
I think that they canceled that.
That's so horrible. It's a tragedy, because I would have been like so.
The last I heard, it is canceled. It could come back around, but at last I heard they canceled it. So yeah. I think that was pretty much it for this episode. Like I said, Fennec, after that test flight, Fennec Shan shows up, which I showed earlier in the clips, and that's basically it. Anything? Do you want to? Yeah. Is there anything else you wanted to cover from the episode?
Yeah, I think that one more thing is just how is this all going to wrap up? I think that, like I said in the beginning, whether or they are going to be able to they have shown in the past that they've been able to wrap up storylines like this, and I hope that they're going to give that respect to Boba Fett to wrap it up and things, and not make him the secondary character and go full Mandalorian season 3. So hopefully that is the case, and they've done this in the past. Although when they did do this in the past, they weren't like a character like Ahsoka was in basically episode 5 of Mandalorian season 2, but she didn't take over the episode. So I'm guessing that it's going to be like that. Like episode 5 was the big review of some major character, but then it's going to set you up for an even bigger character that's going to show up that's going to blow your mind. So that's been the setup in the past, but we'll see how it all shakes out. And I hope that, again, they give some respect to Boba Fett and his journey through these episodes, and don't get distracted by the shiny new Mandalorian that's there.
Yeah, we will see how they wrap it up. They have 2 episodes left. Hopefully they can finish strong to make everything, this whole series, worth it. But yeah, but that is what we think, but we are interested to hear what you guys think. So please comment down below to join the conversation, and we will see you next time. Thanks, guys.